Self-sufficiency is often misunderstood in modern society, especially in the context of relationships. Many people assume that someone who lives alone and does not have a romantic partner is somehow incomplete, lonely, or socially withdrawn. But this assumption overlooks a deeper truth. Self-sufficiency is not a sign of deficiency, it is, in fact, a profound strength. To live alone and thrive without the constant presence of a romantic relationship is not a weakness, but a powerful choice that fosters emotional maturity, resilience, and personal growth. In a world that constantly emphasizes companionship and external validation, it takes a strong individual to live peacefully in their own company. This choice reflects a deep understanding that happiness and contentment are not sourced solely from others, but are built from within. When someone chooses to live alone without a girlfriend or romantic partner, they often do so from a place of self-awareness. They recognize that being with someone should be a matter of compatibility and mutual respect, not an escape from discomfort or loneliness. In this way, self-sufficiency becomes a practice of honesty and intentional living. Living alone creates a unique environment in which a person can learn about themselves in ways that are not always possible when constantly in the company of others. Without the distraction of a partner's needs, emotions, and expectations, one begins to observe their own patterns, strengths, and weaknesses. This introspection allows for emotional clarity. Instead of being swept up in the dynamics of a relationship, a self-sufficient person has the space to ask themselves important questions. What do I truly value? What brings me joy? What are my emotional triggers, and how can I heal them? In many ways, solitude acts as a mirror. It reflects back the parts of ourselves that we often hide or avoid. In a relationship, it is easy to project one's needs and insecurities onto the other person. But when alone, there is no one to blame, no one to lean on for constant reassurance. This may seem difficult, but it is also liberating. It pushes a person to develop their own coping mechanisms, their own emotional support systems. This leads to greater confidence, emotional regulation, and independence. Moreover, the ability to live alone and still feel complete demonstrates a shift from dependence to interdependence. Interdependence means that while one can still appreciate connection and love, they do not rely on it to feel whole. This contrasts with codependence, where self-worth is tied to another's approval or presence. By learning to be content without a relationship, a self-sufficient person builds a stronger foundation for future relationships, one rooted in balance, respect, and individuality. Another important aspect of self-sufficiency is the freedom it provides. The freedom to make decisions without compromise, to structure one's time around personal priorities, and to grow at one's own pace. This is especially valuable for people who are deeply focused on personal development, career, creativity, or spiritual growth. They are able to devote their energy fully to their passions without the emotional negotiation that relationships often require. It's important to note that self-sufficiency does not mean emotional isolation or resistance to love. It simply means that one's sense of identity and fulfillment is not dependent on being in a romantic relationship. In fact, self-sufficient individuals are often more emotionally available and empathetic because they have done the internal work to understand and manage their emotions. They are less likely to enter relationships from a place of neediness and more likely to approach others with authenticity and generosity. Finally, in choosing self-sufficiency, one also models a different way of living to the rest of society. They show others that it is possible to live a full, joyful life without conforming to traditional expectations. This can be especially empowering for people who feel pressured to be in a relationship for the sake of appearance or social acceptance. By living alone and doing so with purpose, self-sufficient individuals send a message that love begins within and that wholeness is not something given by others, but something discovered through self-awareness and growth. In conclusion, Self-sufficiency is not a state of lack, but a state of strength. It is the ability to meet one's emotional, mental, and practical needs independently. It is a sign of personal responsibility, maturity, and inner peace. In a culture that often glorifies romantic attachment, choosing to live alone without a girlfriend can be an act of self-respect and wisdom. It is not something to pity or question, but something to understand, appreciate, and for many even aspire to. The concept of self-love is often misunderstood in popular culture. It is sometimes mistaken for arrogance, selfishness, or emotional detachment. However, true self-love, as emphasized by thought leaders like Louise Hay, is none of these things. It is not about thinking you are better than others or about closing yourself off from relationships. Rather, self-love is about having a deep, respectful, and nurturing relationship with yourself. It is the foundation of emotional well-being and personal fulfillment, and it becomes especially important in the life of someone who lives alone without a romantic partner. To love oneself is to accept who you are fully and without conditions. It is to look at your own reflection, both metaphorically and literally, and say, "I am enough." This may sound simple, but in practice it requires deep introspection, healing, and daily commitment. We live in a world where external validation is heavily emphasized. From social media to advertisements to societal expectations, we are constantly encouraged to seek approval from others. In this environment, living without a girlfriend or a partner can make one feel less than or incomplete. But self-love turns this narrative on its head. It teaches that we do not need to be chosen by someone else to be valuable. Our worth is inherent and unconditional. Self-love is the ability to treat yourself with the same kindness, patience, and compassion that you would offer a close friend. It is the way you speak to yourself during moments of failure, how you nurture your physical body, how you forgive yourself for mistakes, and how you set boundaries to protect your peace. These acts of self-care and self-respect are not luxuries, they are necessities, especially for someone living without a romantic partner. In the absence of daily emotional support from a relationship, your inner voice becomes even more influential. If that voice is critical, harsh, or neglectful, it creates emotional instability. But if that voice is loving, calm, and encouraging, it becomes a powerful source of strength and balance. Living alone provides a unique opportunity to cultivate self-love without distraction. It gives you space to listen to your own needs, explore your passions, and reflect on your beliefs. You are not constantly trying to accommodate another person's emotional landscape, which gives you more energy to understand your own. This isn't selfish, it's foundational. When you truly know and love yourself, you become a more stable, peaceful, and generous person. You no longer chase love as a means of filling a void, but rather you share love from a place of inner abundance. One of the key teachings of Louise Hay was the use of affirmations, positive statements that help rewire negative thought patterns. For someone living alone, affirmations like "I deeply and completely love and accept myself," or "I am whole even as I walk my path alone," can be transformative. These simple phrases, when practiced regularly, can shift your mindset from scarcity to sufficiency, from need to gratitude. Self-love also means recognizing your own growth. When you live alone, you are likely managing your finances, health, home, career, and emotions on your own. This requires resilience, discipline, and emotional intelligence. Acknowledging your ability to handle life independently is an important part of self-love. It builds confidence and trust in yourself. It helps you understand that being alone is not a result of being unworthy. It is often the result of choosing to invest in yourself. Furthermore, self-love helps redefine what a fulfilling life looks like. While romantic relationships can be meaningful, they are not the only source of joy or purpose. A life rooted in self-love is rich with personal goals, creativity, friendships, spiritual growth, and acts of service. You no longer live in anticipation of someone else coming to complete you. You live in the fullness of the present, with a sense of wholeness already within you. In essence, self-love is not a destination, but a lifelong practice. It is choosing to stand by yourself with loyalty and care through the highs and lows. It is the deep understanding that your value is not determined by your relationship status, but by your humanity, your integrity, and your heart. For those who walk the path of solitude, self-love is not just helpful, it is essential. It transforms loneliness into peaceful solitude and turns independence into a source of profound inner power. From a young age, people are exposed to strong social narratives about what it means to live a successful life. Among these expectations, perhaps the most persistent is the idea that romantic relationships, particularly long-term ones, are necessary for fulfillment, happiness, and even respectability. Society often measures personal worth and social status by relationship status, whether someone is dating, engaged, married, or raising a family. This cultural conditioning can be powerful, influencing how people view themselves and others. But what happens when someone chooses a different path, such as living alone without a girlfriend or romantic partner? This is where a conflict often arises between societal pressure and personal growth. On one side is the collective expectation that everyone should be in a romantic relationship by a certain age or stage in life. On the other side is the deeply personal journey of becoming who you truly are, often requiring time alone for self-reflection, healing, and development. It is crucial to understand that these two paths do not always align, and when they don't, choosing personal growth over social approval is an act of courage. Societal pressure can manifest subtly or overtly. It might come in the form of well-meaning questions from friends or family. Why are you still single? Or don't you want someone to share your life with? It can also come through media, where most stories, songs, and movies center on romantic love as the ultimate human experience. Over time, this messaging can create internalized beliefs, the idea that being alone is unnatural, undesirable, or a sign of personal failure. These beliefs can lead people to rush into relationships out of fear, not love, out of a desire to conform, not connect. But personal growth does not follow the same script as social convention. Growth often requires solitude. It asks us to pause, to ask deep questions, to challenge our patterns, and to listen to the quiet voice of inner wisdom. Someone who lives alone and is not in a romantic relationship is not behind. They are often ahead in another, less visible journey. They may be working on self-awareness, building emotional resilience, healing past traumas, or simply aligning their life with their authentic values. The pressure to be in a relationship can distract from this inner work. When someone is constantly trying to meet social expectations, they may abandon the parts of themselves that don't fit. They may suppress their curiosity, creativity, or independence just to appear normal or desirable. But living authentically, even if that means living alone, offers a different kind of reward. It brings integrity, peace, and self-respect. It allows a person to grow into their fullest self, rather than mold themselves into someone else's idea of happiness. Moreover, personal growth requires time and emotional space, both of which are often more accessible when one is not entangled in a romantic relationship. Relationships, while valuable, also involve compromise, shared decision-making, and emotional negotiation. For someone on a path of deep transformation, these demands can sometimes slow down or divert their journey. Solitude, on the other hand, can be a sanctuary. It becomes a sacred space where one can explore new ideas, pursue meaningful goals, and confront limiting beliefs without external interference. One of the most empowering realizations is that life can be rich and fulfilling outside the framework society promotes. Joy can come from creative expression, learning, spiritual practice, travel, friendship, or service to others. Relationships can be meaningful even if they're not romantic. A man living alone without a girlfriend is not cut off from love. He simply chooses to experience love in different forms. Love for self, for truth, for life itself. It's important to note that choosing personal growth over social expectation is not a rejection of relationships. It's a reordering of priorities, a decision to become whole before joining with another. In fact, when people focus on growth first, any future relationships they enter tend to be healthier, more conscious, and more stable. In conclusion, societal pressure can be strong, but it is not always right. Personal growth is not always visible to others, but it is profoundly transformative. Living alone without a romantic partner, when chosen consciously, is not a mark of isolation or failure. It is often a brave and intelligent decision to prioritize self-awareness, healing, and authentic living. Those who walk this path demonstrate that a meaningful life does not require meeting every external expectation. It requires only that you honor your own. In the fast-paced world we live in, constant interaction, social media engagement, and relationship expectations can often drown out the most important voice we need to hear, our own. When someone chooses to live alone, without a girlfriend or romantic partner, they are often gifted with something incredibly valuable that many overlook: time. Time not just in the literal sense, but time as a spacious, uninterrupted opportunity for self-discovery and healing. Living alone allows a person to step back from external distractions and pressures. It offers an environment where thoughts, emotions, and memories can surface without being filtered through someone else's needs or reactions. While relationships provide support and companionship, they can also act as mirrors that reflect our insecurities or even shield us from confronting them. When alone, there is no one to impress, no need to explain or justify one's moods or decisions. This quiet space becomes fertile ground for self-inquiry and emotional healing. Self-discovery is not a passive process. It requires attention, openness, and the willingness to look beneath the surface of daily life. When someone is not absorbed in the rhythms of a romantic relationship, they often have more freedom to ask essential questions. Who am I, really? What do I value when no one else is influencing me? What beliefs have I been living by, and are they actually mine, or are they inherited from family, culture, or past relationships? This journey inward is where transformation begins. It might involve journaling, meditation, reading, engaging in therapy, or simply spending extended time in silence and observation. These practices can help uncover patterns that were once unconscious, such as the tendency to seek approval, to avoid conflict at all costs, or to suppress one's own desires in order to maintain harmony. Once identified, these patterns can be understood, accepted, and gradually transformed. This is the essence of healing. Emotional healing, in particular, is a deep and ongoing process. Everyone carries emotional wounds from childhood, from past relationships, or from the disappointments of life. When constantly entangled in romantic dynamics, it can be easy to project these wounds onto others or use relationships as a way to temporarily soothe pain. But living alone allows a person to take full responsibility for their emotional landscape. It creates the conditions for self-compassion and personal accountability. Healing no longer depends on someone else's love or approval. It becomes an inside job. This space for healing also allows for the release of guilt, regret, or shame that may have accumulated over time. Alone with their thoughts, individuals can revisit past experiences not to dwell, but to understand. They can finally say the things that were left unsaid, even if only to themselves, and find closure. They can forgive others, not because it condones the pain, but because it liberates them from carrying it any longer. They can also learn to forgive themselves, which is often the hardest but most necessary form of healing. In addition to emotional clarity, solitude nurtures spiritual growth. Without the noise of daily relational demands, many people turn inward toward questions of meaning, purpose, and existence. They explore new philosophies, spiritual practices, or creative pursuits that bring a sense of connection beyond the material or emotional world. This kind of growth leads to inner stability, a calmness and confidence that no relationship, job, or status can provide. Another benefit of having time for self-discovery and healing is that it reshapes future relationships. When a person knows themselves deeply, they no longer enter partnerships from a place of lack or unhealed wounds. They are more likely to attract and choose partners who are aligned with their values, boundaries, and emotional maturity. They become capable of loving without losing themselves, of giving without depleting, and of receiving without fear. In conclusion, choosing to live alone without a romantic partner offers more than just physical space. It offers psychological and spiritual space. It is a season of life that can become one of the most enriching, enlightening, and restorative periods of a person's journey. Rather than rushing to fill the silence with companionship, those who embrace this time discover the deep wisdom and strength that come from truly knowing and healing themselves. In this quiet, a person does not lose themselves, they find themselves. Emotional dependence is one of the most common yet often unrecognized challenges in modern relationships. It occurs when a person relies on someone else to regulate their emotions, provide validation, or create a sense of identity and security. While the need for connection is natural, emotional dependence can hinder personal development and lead to patterns of anxiety, insecurity, or even unhealthy attachment. Choosing to live alone without a romantic partner can be a powerful opportunity to break free from these patterns and build emotional autonomy. Freedom from emotional dependence does not mean becoming emotionally numb or detached from others. Rather, it means developing the ability to support and stabilize your own emotional world without requiring someone else to do it for you. This freedom is deeply empowering. It creates a sense of inner peace that no external relationship can offer. A person who learns to be emotionally self-sufficient becomes more grounded, resilient, and capable of navigating life's challenges with calm and clarity. When someone lives alone, they are removed from the constant emotional interplay that comes with being in a romantic relationship. They are not regularly influenced by another person's moods, reactions, or needs. While this may initially feel like isolation, it actually opens the door to emotional independence. In this space, a person begins to observe their own emotional responses more clearly. They learn to recognize what triggers certain feelings and begin asking important questions. Why did that situation upset me? What am I expecting from others that I am not giving to myself? Where am I looking for reassurance or love outside when I could cultivate it within? Answering these questions helps reframe emotional needs. Instead of seeking someone to complete them, emotionally independent individuals learn how to fulfill their own needs first. They begin to create a nurturing inner environment, one built on self-compassion, self-acceptance, and emotional intelligence. This doesn't mean they avoid relationships altogether. It simply means they no longer enter relationships from a place of lack or desperation. Their emotional state does not depend on another's presence, validation, or attention. One of the most transformative aspects of emotional independence is that it shifts the nature of future relationships. When someone is not dependent on another for emotional regulation, they are less reactive, less controlling, and less prone to emotional volatility. They are also less likely to tolerate toxic dynamics or compromise their boundaries. Their interactions become more conscious, more respectful, and more balanced. Love becomes a choice, not a need. Living alone also provides space to learn emotional regulation skills. These include mindfulness, deep breathing, journaling, self-dialogue, and other practices that help manage strong emotions without external input. Over time, these practices build what psychologists call emotional resilience. The ability to bounce back from stress or emotional pain without collapsing or overreacting. This resilience becomes a quiet strength, making a person more adaptable, confident, and emotionally mature. Freedom from emotional dependence also involves letting go of the idea that one's worth is tied to being loved, desired, or needed by someone else. Many people enter relationships not because they are ready to share love, but because they fear being alone. This fear often drives emotional dependence. By living alone and learning to be emotionally content without a partner, an individual directly confronts and overcomes this fear. They discover that solitude does not diminish their value. In fact, it can enhance it. They begin to understand that their feelings are theirs to manage, and their happiness is theirs to create. Another powerful benefit of emotional independence is clarity. When one is not emotionally enmeshed with another person, it becomes easier to make decisions based on truth and logic rather than need or fear. One becomes more discerning, not just in relationships, but in all areas of life. With fewer emotional distractions, a person can pursue goals, passions, and growth without emotional entanglements slowing them down. In conclusion, freedom from emotional dependence is a vital part of personal evolution. It allows individuals to reclaim their power, trust their inner wisdom, and build a solid foundation for their emotional life. Choosing to live alone without a romantic partner is not an escape from intimacy. It is often a necessary step toward genuine connection, both with oneself and eventually with others. Emotional independence is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self-mastery. It is not loneliness, it is liberation. A meaningful life is not defined by relationship status, social approval, or external success. It is built through intention, self-awareness, and alignment with one's deepest values. For someone living alone without a romantic partner, this truth becomes especially important. Without the structure or expectations that often accompany romantic relationships, a person has the unique opportunity to shape their life from the inside out. They can ask, what truly matters to me, and what kind of life do I want to create? In this space, a life of purpose begins to take root. One of the most profound benefits of living alone is the ability to craft a life that is uniquely your own. Without compromise or distraction, you have the freedom to explore your passions, discover your strengths, and pursue goals that resonate deeply with your identity. This could mean building a career you love, engaging in volunteer work, traveling the world, learning new skills, or immersing yourself in creative expression. These pursuits aren't just hobbies or distractions, they are the building blocks of a fulfilling and purpose-driven life. When you are not focused on maintaining a relationship or meeting someone else's needs, you have more time and energy to invest in personal growth and contribution. Many people discover a deeper sense of meaning when they engage in service to others, whether through mentoring, teaching, activism, or simply showing up for their community. Purpose does not always come from grand gestures. It often emerges from small, consistent acts that make a difference. A life lived in alignment with values such as kindness, honesty, and curiosity naturally becomes meaningful. Louise Hay and other spiritual teachers often emphasize that purpose begins with being true to yourself. When you live authentically without pretending, conforming, or performing, you begin to live with integrity. This inner alignment brings peace and satisfaction that no relationship alone can provide. It also prevents the feeling of being lost or incomplete when alone. Instead, life becomes a journey of self-expression and contribution, not a waiting room for love. Another dimension of meaningful living is self-directed learning. When you live alone, you are not constantly influenced by someone else's pace or direction. You can set your own learning goals, challenge your assumptions, and grow on your terms. This kind of intellectual and personal exploration is deeply satisfying. It turns daily life into a learning laboratory, where everything from reading a book to practicing mindfulness becomes a chance to evolve. Spiritual development also plays a key role in creating a purposeful life. Without the emotional complexities of a romantic relationship, many people find more space for introspection, prayer, or meditation. They begin to ask bigger questions. What is my role in the world? How can I live with more love and less fear? What legacy do I want to leave behind? These questions don't always have immediate answers, but simply living with them in mind begins to infuse everyday actions with deeper significance. Importantly, a meaningful life is not just about what you do, it's about how you live. It's about cultivating joy in small moments, cooking a meal, walking in nature, reading a meaningful text, or connecting deeply with a friend. Living alone gives you the chance to savor these experiences without rush or distraction. You begin to notice life more, its rhythms, its beauty, and its lessons. You find meaning not just in goals, but in the present moment. Furthermore, when you're not dependent on romantic validation, you learn to validate your own choices and progress. This self-trust is essential for a life of purpose. It keeps you anchored when others question your path. It reminds you that you do not need to prove your worth through relationships, status, or comparison. You are already enough, and your life already matters. In conclusion, living alone without a romantic partner is not a limitation, but an invitation. It is a chance to create a life that is rich in meaning, driven by purpose, and free from the noise of external expectations. It allows you to explore who you truly are and what you are here to do. In this solitude, you are not waiting for life to begin, you are actively shaping it with courage, intention, and authenticity. This is not just a valid way to live, it is a powerful and beautiful one.